The Verkathi warship hung in geosynchronous orbit above New Terra like a bronze dagger pointed at humanity's throat. Its hull, composed of living metal that rippled with bioluminescent warnings, dwarfed the human defense platforms by a factor of 20. Commander Liana Chen stood in the command center of Firebase Prometheus, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the alien vessel. Around her, technicians worked frantically at their stations, their faces pale with the knowledge that every other species the Verkathi had encountered had surrendered within hours of receiving their ultimatum. "They're hailing us again," reported Lieutenant James Morrison from the communications station, his Scottish accent thick with tension. "Same message, third repetition." Liana nodded. "Put it through." The synthesized voice of the Verkathi commander filled the room, translated by their quantum linguistic processors. "Primitive humans, your resistance is computational error. We have conquered 47 stellar civilizations. Your weapons operate on chemical propulsion. Your ships cannot exceed 0.3 light speed. You possess no gravitic shielding, no quantum displacement fields, no dimensional weapons. Surrender your world. You have one of your hours." The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Then James started laughing. It began as a quiet chuckle, but within seconds he was doubled over his console, tears streaming down his face. The sound was infectious. A technician at the sensor array snorted. Another joined in. Within 30 seconds, the entire command center was filled with the sound of human laughter. Liana allowed herself a smile. "Lieutenant Morrison, please compose a response." James wiped his eyes, still grinning. "With pleasure, Commander. Should I keep it diplomatic?" "Absolutely not." James's fingers flew over his keyboard. "Verkathi warship, this is Firebase Prometheus. We acknowledge your impressive resume. 47 civilizations is notable. However, we feel obliged to point out several factors you may have overlooked in your threat assessment." He paused, glancing at Liana, who nodded for him to continue. "First, you mention our primitive chemical propulsion. You're partially correct. The missiles we're about to fire at you do use chemical rockets. Specifically, they use them to accelerate 10-kilogram tungsten penetrators to 40 kilometers per second. At that velocity, kinetic energy follows a simple equation: 1/2 mass times velocity squared. We'll let you do the math, but it's approximately 8 terajoules per projectile. That's roughly 2 tons of TNT. Per needle, we'll be firing 8,000 of them. Around the command center, weapons officers were already entering firing solutions, their earlier terror replaced with grim satisfaction. James continued typing. Second, you mention our lack of gravitic shielding. Again, accurate. We never developed it because we found a more elegant solution. Don't be where the weapons are. Our ships may only reach 0.3 light speed, but our tactical doctrine doesn't require speed. It requires mathematics. Specifically, ballistic trajectory calculation, which humans have been refining since we threw rocks at each other in caves. On the tactical display, the Verkathi ship remained motionless, supremely confident in its technological superiority. Third, and most importantly, you've made a critical error in xenopsychological assessment. You've conquered 47 civilizations. Do you know how many wars humanity has fought? Against ourselves? Thousands. Over tens of thousands of years. We are a species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction and then decided it was an acceptable deterrent strategy. We split the atom and immediately weaponized it. Twice. On ourselves. Liana walked to the weapons control station. "All batteries report ready, Commander," the weapons officer reported. "Stand by," Liana said quietly. James was still composing. "You demand we surrender because you possess superior technology. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We don't surrender because the odds are bad. Bad odds just make us angry. When the Mongols demanded Europe's surrender, the Europeans laughed and built bigger walls. When the Imperial Japanese thought Pearl Harbor would break American will, Americans laughed and built more ships. When the Nazis thought London would fall to bombing, the British laughed and kept flying. He looked up at Liana. Final paragraph ready, Commander. Send it. Verkati, Commander, we appreciate your generous offer of servitude. We must respectfully decline. You have one of your hours to leave our star system. Because here's the thing about humans. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're not the most advanced. But we are, without question, the most stubborn, creative, and spite-driven species in this galaxy. You threatened our world. So now we're going to show you what chemical propulsion can do. The message transmitted. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the Verkati ship's bioluminescent hull began pulsing rapidly, shifting from bronze to crimson. Their response came through, the synthetic voice noticeably different in tone. You would sacrifice yourselves? Our shields will absorb most projectiles. You cannot win. James looked at Liana, eyebrow raised. She keyed her microphone. Verkati Commander, this is Commander Chen. You're absolutely right. Your shields will probably stop 90% of our attack. But here's the thing about 8,000 projectiles moving at 40 kilometers per second. We only need 10% to connect. And even if we lose, even if you glass our entire planet, we've already transmitted our tactical data to every human colony in 40 star systems. They'll be waiting for you, with bigger railguns. She paused, letting that sink in. We're not trying to win. We're trying to make conquering us more expensive than it's worth. Because that's what humans do. We make our enemies pay for every centimeter. In blood, in resources, in time. We don't surrender. We reload. Liana cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Fire. The firebase shuddered as 8,000 tungsten penetrators launched simultaneously from magnetic accelerators hidden across New Terra's surface. On the display, they appeared as a glittering cloud of death, spreading and accelerating. The Verkati ship's shields flared brilliant white as the first wave hit. Then the second, the third. James watched his sensors. Their shields are holding, but their power consumption just spiked 300%. They're diverting energy from weapon systems. The fourth wave hit, the fifth. Small breaches appeared in the shield envelope. Then, impossibly, the massive warship began to turn. They're moving, a technician called out, heading out of orbit. James checked his readings twice, not believing them. Commander, they're retreating. They're actually retreating. Liana allowed herself a breath. Open a channel. When the connection established, she spoke calmly. Verkati Commander, you're making a wise choice. Humanity will remember that you chose survival over pride. We suggest you update your threat assessment protocols. When you encounter humans, the correct response isn't to demand surrender. It's to ask nicely, offer fair terms, and remember that we're the species that looked at the food chain and decided we weren't on it. We invented it. The Verkati ship continued accelerating away from New Terra. James leaned back in his chair, grinning. Think they'll be back? Liana watched the alien vessel disappear from their sensors. Maybe. But if they are, they'll bring negotiators, not warships. They just learned the most important lesson about humanity. What's that? We don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because we refuse to lose. There's a difference. Around the command center, exhausted humans began to cheer. Liana permitted herself a smile. Somewhere in the depths of space, 47 conquered civilizations would soon hear a new story. About the species that laughed at impossible odds and reloaded. About humanity. The end.